taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet?
I love people as I meet them one by one. People are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole...
My great aspiration, my greatest ambition is to be so good. Now, in that way, I'm tiresome, as I suppose, to live with, because I want to be a fantastic human being.
I am the greatest.
We're not disputing that, Cassius, but how does Sonny Liston feel about it?
He can't feel but one way, and let's take everything I say and like it. Because February the 25th, I'm going to take back my job. I'm the champ. He's no champ. He's a tramp.
When you see men fall, don't laugh. Learn. Learn. Because you're on your way up. And the things that tempt people to fall, you and I are not free from that temptation.
Come on, computer.
Oh, my bad. Check. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
I messed around and had my mic on mute again.
Whoops. That would do it.
I didn't realize it was.
That's not mine.
I told her. Hey, I don't know why I do that, folks. My apologies. If y'all, when I go back and edit the stream, I will chop out the first 5 to 6 minutes, so you don't have to. Let me switch over.
All right. We're at the park today. Nice view.
I ain't mad at the scenery. It looked like it's nice out.
It's very beautiful. There's a nice sunset behind me
freezing.
Too.
I see it.
The mountains. And then there's a lake over there too.
That's what's up. It is absolutely freezing over here. Yeah, complete opposite. It's amazing how.
Go ahead.
It's amazing. I was just gonna say it's amazing how you can be on the same ball of dirt, but the scenery and the temperature and the weather and the landscape is completely different for everybody else.
Oh yeah. It's a pretty nice day today for us. Tad bit cold, but not as bad as I guess it is on the East Coast right now.
By the time I got to work this morning, I couldn't feel my fingers or my thumbs. I couldn't feel nothing. I was numb.
Mm-hmm. Is it just cold or is it raining snow?
Man, we ain't getting no snow. We'd be lucky if we get a flurry or two this year. That's just over here on my side. But if you go to deeper parts of Virginia, they probably get it. We're not getting too much. I ain't even looking forward to it. I'm not going to get my hopes up for it.
Mm-hmm. I heard certain parts of the Great Lakes area haven't got snow for almost a full year now, and a lot of people are kind of like what's going on here? Like a lot of people are noticing it, especially up near like Michigan, where they pretty much get snow a lot of the year, and it's been over 200 days since they last got snow. And so a lot of people are like, that's not normal.
Right. Blame it on weather modification. I'm joking, but maybe I'm not. You never know. Now, this one came across my desk, right? Just scrolling social media, you just find so many gems. People just have different questions, and they spark up so many different conversations. Like, it's impossible to run out of a topic. This one right here is a little more what's the word, perplexing to me, because I've heard it before, but it's not very often. So I wanted to talk about this one, and maybe the audience might know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. Toxic positivity. I just thought the word was made up. I Googled it. There's an actual definition for it, but I didn't think that was an actual thing or a word. So I want to go into that. What is it?
Okay.
What does it look like? Is it excessive? Is it compulsive? Is it? I mean, like, what are we talking about here with this?
Toxic positivity, from my understanding, is basically the mind, like everything. I think it can kind of exist on a spectrum. Like, people can be extremely toxically positive, or like kind of minimally, but I think everyone has the capacity for it. But it's basically when you only look at the positive outcomes and you kind of ignore the painful parts of the issue. I think when toxic positivity becomes a problem is kind of when people allow their bad habits to kind of get away from them under the guise of like, oh, I'm just being who I am, like I'm just living my life. And like, for example, the people that go out and drink and they're like, oh, you only live once, like, oh, you just have to let loose and let yourself live and whatever. Like, it's kind of that mindset of being overly positive about things that have very potentially detrimental consequences. I think it's also, from when I remember, at least in school, it's also very much in line with like mental health as well, where like if you're toxically positive, you're going to be that person like, oh, I'm so depressed right now. And then they come up to you and they're like, oh no, don't be that way. You just need a hug. Like, you'll be fine. Just get over it. Like, no worries. It's kind of, they seem to disregard the consequences of some mental health related issues like bullying, like suicidality, self-harm, stuff like that. I think it's kind of the aspect that it might trivialize some of those things for people, and it can make it harder for those that are genuinely going through those issues to feel like they have support. Because if you come at somebody that's struggling through depression, you're like, oh, just be happy, they feel like you're brushing off their experience and you're not actually listening to them, and you're just kind of trying to be like, no, we don't want your depression. That's inconvenient. Be happy. Everyone wants you to be happy. It's easier that way for all of us. So I think from my interpretation, that's kind of why toxic positivity is a thing and why it's so looked down upon. It's a way of kind of overlooking the consequences of difficulties that people go through.
So brushing it under the rug, avoiding dealing with the hurt. I was kind of thinking like that too. I was thinking because I heard somebody say that you're too optimistic. You're too like Hakuna Matata. You're overly um passive. You can do it. You got it all under control. When we know that you don't have it all under control. Uh Hello. I'm out here in a box right now. You're talking about I got it under control, or I got a eviction notice here, or they just told me that I had stage 4 such and such, but I got it all under control.
Yeah. And like the
Right.
expectation that people
Okay.
shouldn't suffer in front of you. Like, we don't want that. We don't want to see you upset because that's upsetting to us. Stay away with that.
You bring up a good point too, because I've been around people where you know they tried everything in their power to just stay bright, and I get it, but you and I are kind of on different spectrums right now. I'm going through something. I need to feel. I need to express. I have to. I feel like you're being dismissive, but you're just doing it in a patronizing way.
Yeah. Like, if you just think happy, it'll go away. You won't have the problem. It's your fault because it's your attitude, basically. Even though it's not their fault. Or potentially is not their fault.
Weird to me. Because so are we saying here that people who think like this are doing it purposely, and that they're just being dismissive and they're being condescending? Because here's the thing, right? When I have conversations with people, I might not know all the lingo. I might not understand all the terminology and everything that they're saying, but I do understand body language. I do understand how to piece together phrases and concepts and ideas, and I do understand human nature and behavior patterns. So if you speak to me in a certain tone and you choose certain words to describe this and describe that, and I can pick up on that. It's not rocket science. You don't need an encyclopedia to know when someone is being nuanced with the stuff that they're saying without saying.
And I think there's also probably a degree of lack of emotional understanding, or like, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, if it's persisted through other decades and I'm just not aware of it because I didn't live through them, but it seems like today people are less aware of their feelings, what they mean, what other people are feeling and what they mean. Like, a lot of people I've noticed tend to assume that everyone is feeling the same thing they are, and it's interesting to see how many people are kind of shocked that other people don't think the same way. Like, how many people are genuinely surprised that, like, wait, they don't actually have the same opinions as me. I thought we all just thought the same. I think there could be an element of that, because if you're trying to console somebody and you're afraid of offending them, or you're afraid of saying something wrong, triggering them, whatever, or you just like don't know them that well, you don't know what comforts them or whatever, it might lead you to say things that are toxic positivity, because you just want to kind of cover the bases or something. Like you just want to support them and show them that you're there. And so I think it could come across as toxic positivity. And in that sense, I don't think it's negative if it's just your lack of understanding. At least you're making an effort to like, oh no, it's okay. You'll be okay. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we'll get through it, whatever they're going through. But I think once you start to ignore your own efficacy in it, that's when it starts to become more of a problem. Like, for example, the toxic positivity that we all know. Oh, I don't need to study for the test. I know this stuff. I'm good. I remember it. I saw that the teacher did the thing, so I watched the PowerPoint. I'll be fine. And then you get the test and you're like, wow, I don't remember any of this stuff. It's that type of toxic positivity that gets us, because it's almost like emotional procrastination, where we're using our emotions to quell us into thinking like, oh, we'll be fine for now. We don't need to do anything about this. We don't need to take action. And the outcome will just be okay because we want it to be. And I think humans have this intention, this thing where if we want something bad enough, we kind of almost expect that it will. Like the universe is going to line up for us to make it happen. And I think that's kind of where toxic positivity kind of festers today, where there's a lot of people that use it to avoid actually making any changes. Like I've seen that a lot in friends that I have that struggle with mental illnesses, where they kind of lurk in toxic positivity, where they kind of flip between like, oh, I'm so depressed, I'm struggling, but then they're like, they have this breakthrough, and then they kind of go through this period where like, I fixed everything, I found it, and I'm never gonna have to be depressed again, I'm never gonna be anxious again, I found my answers and like I'm good. And then they get like crushed by the depression again, because they had been telling themselves like, it's not gonna happen, and then it does, and it drags them down so hard. So I can't exactly say where the toxic positivity comes from, but I think it's very prevalent. Like I think it's very common, and I would not be surprised if it's linked to the like chronic disappointment, chronic unhappiness that we kind of see today, because we've almost created a society around toxic positivity where if like you just don't think about the bad things, they won't happen. Like just ignore it and it'll go away. And we've ended up in this society where we've been finding out that ignoring things and being overly positive and expecting that they're just going to work out because we want it to is not the way things work. And it's not working out for us. And we're kind of getting slapped hard with that reality right now.
I wonder if this is something that was created by us specifically, or if there's other elements that we should consider. For example, a lot of our ideas and our ambitions and our dreams, typically they begin with a thought based on something that you have interest in, and then you kind of start to piece and weld things together to formulate this objective that you might romanticize in your head. And then the question is, where does that stem from? Is it coming from a place of positive reinforcement, or is it coming from a negative aspect? I said a few days ago, maybe a week ago, that there's different spirits, different demonic spirits that come in different forms. Just my take. One of them, because I really believe that there's numerous. There's not just the Jezebel spirit. That's one of the most infamous ones.
Yeah,
I believe you have a number of them, and I think this could be actually argue to be one. Because I say I'm probably one of the few people that will admit that I have done this, and I do struggle with this myself. If I've really had to sit and pinpoint where it started, I couldn't give you a direct answer today because I wouldn't want to lie to myself. But I do know that I constantly have, because it's like this. You wanna uplift yourself, but you don't want to lie to yourself either.
Yeah.
But you don't want to punish yourself either. So it's like, which one would you prefer? Would you rather constantly remind yourself of all of the pressure that is right there, or would you rather it's gonna work itself out?
Yeah.
Just hang in there, and yeah, you got it. And then time goes past, nothing has been gotten, and now you're kind of like, oh, phone call, tap,
Yeah.
type, trying to do stuff at the last second, and it's like, and then at the same time you're still holding on to that fairy tale glass slipper theology. And see, I didn't know that this is what this was surrounding, or what this was kind of based on, to be honest with you. I didn't. I just thought when a person said toxic, I'm like, what you mean toxic? How can you be toxic and positive? That don't make no sense.
Yeah. I remember when
I see the picture that you're painting.
Yeah, I remember I first learned about it in high school, and I thought the same thing as you. I'm like, how is it bad to be positive? What the heck? Like, isn't that what we want? Like, and it's so easy for at least in my experience, like, it's easier for me to recall all the people out there that are so negative and so grumpy and so mean. Like, it's such an iconic personality that you never consider that the opposite could also be a bad thing. You often think of, like, the grump is the one that, like, oh, nobody likes the grumpy person. But it's funny because when you do finally have those friends or meet those people that are, like, actually toxically positive, it is pretty draining. It can be kind of frustrating, especially if you're trying to work out. I think it to me, it comes out the most when you're trying to problem solve. And I think that's why it's the most frustrating, because when you're trying to problem solve, the toxically positive people are kind of the ones that are like, we don't need to plan. We don't need to do anything for this. We shouldn't even be bothering to think about it, because what will happen will happen. Like, it'll all work out. It'll all be okay. And I think when action is required in a certain situation, that's where toxic positivity really becomes a really obnoxious barrier. Because like, for example, I've dealt with depression. I've dealt with self-harm, like really difficult feelings. And I went to one of my friends to talk to her about it, and she was religious. And so I thought I was going to be able to kind of get advice from her, and I was hoping to get kind of like wisdom. And I came to her, and she straight up told me, like, all you have to do is pray to God to be happy, and you'll be happy. And I was so mad at her for giving me that response, because I'm like, are you really telling me that all I have to do is ask to be happy and I'll magically be happy? I'm like, that is the most bogus response I've ever heard in my life. I was probably like 17 at the time, but it's what people do. I see it now more as an adult now, that people will literally just be like, oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. Like, you can just ignore it. You don't have to act on it. You don't have to make any changes. I mean, you see it with environmental stuff. Like, I've seen people say to me, I won't act on climate change. I won't do anything for climate change because I'm waiting for other people to make the changes first. Like, they'll fix it first. I don't have to do anything. And so I think, like, that is really where it becomes very negative, when it enables inaction and it enables ignorance and it enables people to pretend that the problems aren't even happening. Like a tragic example, the Holocaust. The people that chose to turn a blind eye to everyone that was getting on the train turned a blind eye to what was actually happening to them, and they lied to themselves, telling them that, oh yeah, they are going off to these I don't know. They had so many different lies for what they told the German people of where they're sending them off to. Like, oh, we're sending them off to different countries so they can get education or whatever. Like, they made up all these lies, and the overly positive people believed it, and they wanted to believe that their government was actually helping all of these people. So I think it's it starts off innocent, but it can turn into something dangerous if a larger swath of the population is allowed to kind of coexist within it.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think people really. If you put the average human, man or woman, in the room with another of their gender, see, I don't want to do like this male female thing. I just want to keep it kind of neutral if I can. But if you put the average person in the room with someone else, and one person has everything going for them, the other person is not so fortunate. A lot of people don't really care. A lot of folks do not want to hear your problems, and so it's almost like you build or create this defense mechanism. So before they reject you, you go ahead and reject yourself, and you create this world where, damn, shout out to Jason. So we did something on this kind of similar, where you would create another version of you that deals with all of the gook and all of the mire,
Mhm.
and you live in the other world where you're the fun and happy-go-lucky, smile on your face person.
Dream world.
So you turn everything, yeah, you turn everything over to this person, while you go out here and put on this show. Do you
It's
think
kind of how
we
the brain
just
works.
don't care?
Um, I think it's kind of a mix of things. I think there's a subset of the population that legitimately do not care. They have a personality flaw or a upbringing that led them to be self-centered, and they don't care about other people, or at least they have been traumatized into believing that they don't care about other people. I think there's a subset of the population that are just not all there in their mind. Like, they are well-meaning. They're very I from my experience in life, I have found that the people that tend to be like not all the way present in the moment also tend to be extremely kind and loving people. They're the very outwardly social, like they want to make friends with every person they run into. They will lead you on hour-long conversations about whatever's on their mind. I think those people kind of are on the middle road, where they care about themselves because they're very inwardly focused. They're very, like, they love to share about themselves and share with other people, but they also still have that social aspect where they want to have other people in their lives, and they want to have other people feel as good as them. And then I think you have the people that are more selfless. Um, I think the you see more of the toxic positivity from those in the middle, because I think the ones on the outskirts that don't care about anybody just aren't going to interact with you in general. They're not going to be supportive, and they're not going to give you like, you can do this, you can get there, like, because they don't even care to believe it themselves. But I think the toxic positivity comes from the people that are both unaware but also well-meaning. Because at least I'm kind of drawing this inspiration from a particular friend that I have. She is the sweetest person you'll ever meet, but a lot of her advice that she does give is very like middle of the road, like I don't want to offend anybody, and so it comes off as that toxic kind of positivity, toxic kindness, where it's like, oh well, everything will be fine, like you don't have to worry about anything. So I think there's definitely a personality component to it. I don't think you're gonna find a lot of like grumpy, curmudgeonly jerks that are gonna be toxically positive. But I think it's the people that already kind of are on that for themselves, the ones that are already kind of like, well, everyone's nice, everyone can be your friend, everyone's beautiful, the life is beautiful, you just have to find the beauty in everything, which is of course a wonderful trait, but again, it can have its downsides, as I said. So yeah, I think it's like personality related.
I'm just thinking, right? If you have someone who is miserable, grumpy, like you said, they always like, I ain't trying. But then you got the hey, it's me. Hey, how you doing? Hey, good to see you. Appreciate you. You know, hey, I hope your days go well. You know, hey, who are you more likely to want to be around?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, who's being more honest and who's being more real with themselves? The person who is super bubbly, or the person who just because now, you know, I always say you can't judge people based on appearance. You just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They could look scary and creepy, and all of these, but you don't know what's happening in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's I say all the time. I don't want to be around nothing negative. I can't. But then it's like, well, are they the ones that's being more real?
Mm-hmm.
Because at least if they're assholes, they're being honest about it. Versus the other person who is probably one, but they just can't convey it. Or you ain't even gotta be an asshole. You might want to tell the truth to people, but you're scared to run them off, or you're trying to protect their feelings, or whatever you think is happening here.
Or
So
your
what are we really doing with this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's definitely the opposite. Like I've definitely met people in my life that had the toxic negativity where no matter what you said to them, everything was miserable, everything was going to get ruined, everything was going to end, nothing was going to go well, you're going to die young and you're going to get in a car, like that type of behavior. I think really it's best to kind of exist in the middle, because it becomes insufferable on either end for most people, I think. Like unless you're equally unless you're equally on that level with that person, it's very hard for somebody that's not as far of an extreme to be around somebody that is toxically either end, because it's as somebody that tries to stay as much in a realistic zone as possible, it's very frustrating to hear either end, because both of them are kind of anti-solution oriented. They're more like, it is what it is, forget about it, like leave it alone, don't do anything, it's not worth it, it's not worth your time. And I've never been a fan of inaction, because inaction is just as bad as negative action in the wrong action in the wrong direction. So it's hard for me to say if one is better than the other, because they're both equally frustrating, and they can both be equally deceptive, I guess. Because if you're existing in a dark cloud, everything is going to come off as a dark cloud to you. But if you're sitting in the sun, everything is going to look bright and shiny to you. So it definitely requires a mindset shift to come out of it. But I think it's also kind of interesting because just my first inclination, I feel like it would be harder to convince somebody to be not positive than it would be to convince somebody to be not as negative. I kind of wonder about that dynamic. Like convincing somebody out of that mindset, which one people might be more attached to.
That's a good point. That cloud that follow you around, you know, you can't create your own storms, your own mental storms. That is, whatever it is that you got. That's one of the reasons why I just absolutely enjoy having conversations like this, is because everything is going on up here 24 hours a day. You don't talk to everybody all day, and you're certainly not telling everybody your business.
Yeah,
and what you're thinking and what
that's
you're
a problem.
feeling. So that's yeah, that stuff has to get displaced somewhere. And unlearning, and first you got to even admit that it's a problem or that is recognizable, and then you really have to decide, how do you get out of that way of thinking?
And where do you put those feelings too?
How do you do, like, right? I got on the phone with someone right now, and I told them a long laundry list of everything that they are doing. I'm telling you this from a good place, and you don't know how to receive it. What was the point of me saying anything?
They're just going to disregard it if they didn't
There's
want
this,
to hear advice.
Right. There's this parable about there's being certain seeds that gets planted. Some seeds land on concrete and dry out. Some seeds get soil but get choked out by the weeds in the garden. And then there's seeds that get planted in good soil, and it gives the fruits of something great. That's how I look at that. You're either going to choke out the information, or it's not even going to go anywhere.
Yeah, you're going to dry up before it even gets to. I think one thing I think that the reason why it's so hard for external people to reach people that have this internalized problem is because if the external source is coming to that person before that person, the one that's struggling, has expressed an interest in change, I don't, unless they have like an exterior motivation, like they're a parent or they're one of the most consequential ones, but sometimes people do it for a job, sometimes people do it for friends. But like, unless somebody has a genuine reason to change their personality, their behavior, their actions, people rarely will. And so it's very hard for you to approach somebody with a observation and say, hey, I've noticed this really difficult thing for you to deal with, and I think you should change it. A lot of people shut down when they hear something like that, because as well-meaning as that person is, as well-loved as that person is, people do not like to hear that somebody that loves them found something distasteful about them and wants it to change. And it's also kind of a threat in a way, because if someone else is that you care about is telling you that you need to change this thing about you, there's always going to be that fear in the back of your mind that if you don't change that thing, it's going to cause problems into the future and that they're going to potentially leave. So I think for people that are kind of on that spectrum, it's only those that see that as a problem and want it to change that would be open to somebody coming to them and being like, hey, I noticed this thing about you. I think you should work on it. Like, it's very hard for people to be told that they're insignificant or inept in a certain way. And so I think that's also why, because if you're already like really, really hard line one end of the spectrum or the other, you probably kind of made up your mind that that's part of your personality, and it's almost a comfort zone now. Like, that's the area where you feel the most secure. And so you're not, unless you have like a legitimate reason, you're not really going to want to put in the efforts to make any changes in the other direction. I've definitely seen this in some of our friends. We've had to end a friendship before because the person absolutely refused to accept that his life was worth living. And so most of our conversations with him was just him talking about how he wanted to kill himself and how much he hated himself and how much everyone hated him. And I think once you're so damaged that you kind of live in that realm, it's incredibly hard for anyone else to make you want to. Like, you can't change the type of seed somebody is. You can't change the type of soil that they're thrown into. You can just affect the amount of water that you give them. And so you can't make people sprout if they don't want to. Sad though. As much as I wish I could change people's minds.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I think a lot of us have been in that position with a lot of folk. We've walked away from people, they've walked away from us, and you'll beat yourself up over it because you feel like you could have done more or said more. But you and the other person, you're not in the same space. And whatever has to happen in their season has to happen. Like, everything is catered to us based on us.
Yeah.
The way God gets my attention is not going to be the same way it gets your attention or the next person's attention.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's path is curated specifically to them. He'll throw you in somebody's intersection.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to them to recognize whether or not it's a yellow sign, it's a red light, or it's a green one. Now that I got a better understanding of what toxic positivity looks like, it's forcing me to reevaluate myself and what I'm disengaging myself from, because I'm not purposely doing it. I don't know if everyone is purposely doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say that we do purposely delay dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people,
I don't know.
It's like they don't even know they're doing.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think also a lot of people I don't even think are aware they're doing it. They have either been raised by parents that did it, had friends that did it, or they just were naturally that way. And if you kind of have that as your instinctive response, it's hard for you to see why that would be a negative thing unless somebody actually like points it out to you and says like, do you notice that you do this? Like most people aren't going to notice things that they do unless somebody else makes a comment on it, or they read something about it, or they witness it themselves in themselves because something else made them aware that they were doing it. But I don't think very many people are actually like sitting there one day and they're like, I do this thing. I wonder if everyone else does it. Like, I think it's mostly other people that makes us notice our own habits.
That's weird, right? I shouldn't have to wait on somebody to tell me about me. Which is funny because when somebody would tell me about me, I would say, "Don't tell me about me. I know me better than you know me. How you gonna tell me about something? I already know this. I already know that. I already know why you
That's probably why people
why
get so upset too,
people
because they're
do
like,
that."
why are you telling me this?
Exactly.
Yes, I'm on the West Coast. Beautiful sunset. One of the people commented, they're like, are you on the
Anna in the
West Coast?
building. Salute, salute, salute. Oh yeah, that's Anna. She shout out to her, man. I was gonna ask you a question. I'm trying to get it back. Uh what are what's the number one sign to look for in someone who is notorious for toxic positivity? If you had to guess.
Jokingly, I'd say their voice, because I've noticed toxic positivity people tend to have like the high pitched voice every time they talk to you. They're so excited. But more seriously, I think it's really the how much they summarize their advice. Like if they're coming up to you saying like, wow, I'm sorry you're struggling with this. Here's some insight that I have or have heard or whatever, like that's one thing. But if you're saying like, oh, you're depressed, I'm so sorry. You should feel better though. If you get a hug, you'll feel fine. It's when they almost cut you off to reassure you. I think that's kind of the key signal that somebody's using toxic positivity, where they block you from continuing on with the conversation. Like they kind of keep you from getting into the negative details just so they could come back and say, it'll be okay though. Like it'll be fine. So I think that's kind of the hallmark, is how much they actually allow you to elaborate on the situation that you're going through and how much they offer in response. If they're giving a really vapid response, they probably don't care as much about what you're going through and are more saying whatever just to make you feel better.
Oh, that's a whole nother. I'm gonna have to write that one down because for real, people who constantly cut you off. That is a. I want to do a top 5 pet peeve list, and then I want to go that list. Why
Right now,
it triggers
another
me
session.
and or whoever. If you have a top 5 list, send me your top 5 pet peeve list. We're gonna talk about it because I
Yeah.
cannot stand people who interrupt when I'm speaking. I can understand if it's one of those situations where we're just so on par with whatever it is we're discussing, and you just excited about it. If it's you just trying to shut me up because you really ain't interested in what I'm saying, oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely understand that on both sides, because I am the type of person that will excitedly interrupt you just because a fact pops into my head. I'm like, I have to say it. I try to so hard not to be that way, but yeah, I cannot stand the people that like aggressively cut you off just because they don't want to hear what you have to say. Like, I think there's a difference between wanting to share and wanting to put a sock in it, like trying to get people to actually stop sharing. I'm gonna go sit in my car because it's getting kind of dark.
Anna just said last time someone used toxic positivity, I was confused and gaslit. Once I recognized it, I was done conversing. Hey, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's happened to me on a number of occasions. That's probably why I don't use the phone too much anymore. I don't even really talk to a lot of people very long. And if I do, it has to be for a very important reason, just because I can't stand people who try to use gaslighting. I can't stand people who try to change the subject and do all of this other extra unnecessary stuff to kind of swindle you from getting to a point or landing your no. I'm cool on that.
Yeah.
You have
And
any
I think that's a
final thought? Go ahead. I didn't cut you.
I think I kind of covered it in the last bit that I said. Mostly, if somebody's dealing with being toxically positive or toxically negative on the other end, and they want to do something about it, I think one of the first things would be to just start noticing what triggers that behavior. Because it can give you a lot of insight into the emotions that cause you to feel the need to kind of stifle somebody else's candor about difficult topics. And it might even reveal like mental issues that person themselves is even dealing with. And then I think on the opposite end, for anybody that's dealing with a person that is toxically positive or toxically negative and either wants the person to like handle it, I think depending on the relationship that you have with the person, it would be better in the long term to talk to the person about it. It definitely should be framed in a way that it's not coming off as blame, but it is one of those traits that Denali, please. If you have a good relationship with somebody, I think it's definitely worth bringing up because, as I said earlier, it's one of those habits that you might not be aware that you do. And so if it's a problem that's getting in the way of a healthy relationship with somebody, whether it's a friendship relationship, I think it's definitely worth it to kindly confront them about the problem that they're having and try and nicely point out when they're doing it, just to kind of improve their awareness. But other than that, it's, as I said, it's always great to be positive as long as you're being positive and taking action as well. It should not be just like you shouldn't just talk. You have to walk the walk. If you're not willing to actually make an effort don't continue talking about it, because it's not worth it to keep going on and on about something if you're not actually going to be making an effort towards that goal. We have good timing for the end of the show.
Yeah. I'm not going to hold you much longer. Thank you again for pulling up. Shout out to the fam. Y'all drive safe. Enjoy the rest of your night. And this was another good one. Another good one. Always honored to have you up here. Have a great Wednesday. And I can see you Friday, Saturday?
Thursday, I think. Or no, Friday. Yeah. Forgot what day it is.
Gotcha. All right, I'm gonna let you up off here. Shout out to everybody who pulled up to watch with us tonight. Y'all have a blessed one.
Have a good night.